Aid organizations are asking countries around the world to help raise $100 million in aid for Myanmar following Friday's earthquake. According to the military junta, more than 2,000 people were killed. Rescuers are combing through collapsed buildings for signs of life. A Chinese team has saved 4 people who were trapped under mounds of rubble.
Rescuers in Myanmar pull a survivor from a residential building in Mandalay City. And they freed another at a hotel that was flattened in Friday's earthquake. Chinese teams found 4 people in total, including a pregnant woman and a child, according to Chinese state media. Families camp outside ruins, waiting to see if their loved ones will also be among the lucky. In the capital, Naypyidaw, hospitals are operating outdoors. Residents say they're living in a state of fear.
At night, we sleep in a wide open area, but we can't sleep well because there are aftershocks every 2 or 3 hours. We can't eat well either. I'm only drinking water and feel exhausted. We cannot expect to rebuild our lives under these circumstances. We may have to live in a slum. Nothing's left. Even now, I can't afford to get food.
International aid and rescue teams are making their way to Myanmar, but the nation is in the midst of a civil war. Aid groups are calling on the ruling military junta to grant them unhindered access.
Well, before the earthquake, the operating conditions at best were challenging. There were issues regarding humanitarian access, there were issues regarding authorizations. We're hopeful that given the scale of and the needs, some of those limitations or restrictions may be relaxed.
Since Friday's earthquake, the military has reportedly carried out airstrikes against rebels. Critical infrastructure and the economy were already crumbling. The quake has brought more hardship to people already struggling to survive.
Well, I'm joined now by Bianca Drogosch. She's the deputy head of mission of the German embassy in Yangon. The embassy, we understand, is now working to coordinate disaster relief. Ms. Drogosch, it's good to have you with us. Can you give us an update on the situation in the worst affected areas, such as Mandalay?
Good evening. Yes, we've just, I think, already heard it in the intro. There are upwards of 2,000 deaths so far confirmed, several thousands injured, many more missing. The real death toll is likely a lot higher, somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000, according to estimates. In Mandalay alone, on satellite pictures, we can see that roughly 180,000 homes are either completely destroyed or severely damaged. There is still no electricity in most parts of the affected regions. Estimates show that around 44 townships have been most affected, with around 16 million people living in these areas. Water systems have broken down. The healthcare system, we already saw it in the intro, is absolutely overwhelmed. The transportation system has broken down. So the most affected areas are really in a state of utter shock and dysfunctioning.
We understand that the airport in Mandalay was damaged. It's now closed, making the delivery of international aid to those areas extremely difficult. Do you know of any progress in this regard? I mean, are people finding a way to get aid to the people who need it?
Yes, fortunately, it is possible to bring aid into most of the affected regions by road. It takes a long time, between 8 and 12 hours from Yangon on highways that have themselves been affected, but it is possible and there are convoys underway. The good news is that parts of the Mandalay airport seem to have been repaired and it may reopen partially in a couple of days, but that's not for sure. So for the time being, it's only road transport. It works, but it is very complicated and it takes a long time to get to the affected areas.
And what about the role of Germany? How is it providing disaster relief in Myanmar?
So Germany is contributing first and foremost through its existing channels, that is especially through UN organizations. We have, for instance, contributed for 2025 $5 million into the Myanmar Humanitarian Fund, which is a country-based pooled fund managed by the UN organization OCHA. We have also contributed for 2025 into the Central Emergency Relief Fund, also managed by the UN, that has just announced a contribution of $5 million to Myanmar, out of which approximately every fifth dollar is actually from Germany. And there are also a lot of international NGOs that are present in the country that receive German funding. And we are, of course, also looking into additional means, but we mostly go through the existing, very well-established aid system that is already in the country.
And we have to remind our viewers, Myanmar has been in the grip of a civil war. Is this disaster, is it putting that conflict on hold at all?
That is yet a little bit difficult to assess. What the medium-term effects of the earthquake will be on the conflict. What we can say is that there is no such thing as a formal ceasefire yet, a formal humanitarian ceasefire. There have been unilateral declarations amounting to ceasefires by some of the opposition groups that are active in the affected areas. That is very, very positive. We have unfortunately not heard something similar yet from the Myanmar military, and there are also very plausible reports that the Myanmar military is continuing, for instance, airstrikes on civilian populations. And if that holds true, that of course is absolutely horrendous in a situation like that and needs to stop immediately. So for the time being, it seems that there is a bit of a dampening, but nothing is for sure. And it seems to be more unilateral for the time being. Of course, we need everybody to calm down on armed conflict for the time being and for aid workers to be able to do their work.
Yeah, and this is one of those crises where USAID would have been running in and with aid helping people in need. That is not the case at this moment. With that in mind, what are the biggest needs in Myanmar right now?
It's not a satisfying answer, but it is probably everything. It really goes in terms of funds. It was already mentioned in the intro. The need is immense. The damage is estimated to be approximately on the same level as Myanmar GDP. In terms of material, it's really everything is lacking, from body bags to basic medicine, from blood reserves to basic shelter, food. Everything is lacking. And then in terms of practicalities, there's a lot of structural damage that has secondary effects also on aid. For instance, essentially the breakdown of electricity infrastructure that will have strong effects over the coming month. So it's really a very multi-layered crisis, and the country essentially needs more of everything.
Okay, Deputy Head of Mission of the German Embassy, Bianca Drogosch. Ms. Drogosch, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Appreciate you giving us your insights on this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Marie Manrique is Programme Coordinator for Myanmar at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. She joins us from Yangon in Myanmar. Welcome to DW. With people still being pulled alive from the rubble, I guess that gives us all hope.
Definitely. We still have a very small window of opportunity. We know that the search and rescue teams have been very active these past few days. We're already 3 days from the first earthquake, but I want to say there have been several aftershocks, including one 5.1 yesterday in Mandalay. So we know that the situation is quite serious, but also we're quite concerned because seeing the numbers rise of fatalities, the numbers of people injured, we know unfortunately in the next few days these numbers will continue to increase.
The World Health Organization has designated the Myanmar earthquake a level 3 emergency, the highest level. What does that allow them and you to do?
So for the Red Cross and Red Crescent, for us, it's actually, we also have our own categorization. We also put it at the highest categorization. We recently, yesterday, launched an emergency appeal for 100 million Swiss francs, which is about 113 million US dollars for 2 years for the Red Cross to be able to respond to this situation. We know we need emergency response immediately, but this is a long-term issue that we're looking at. What is the recovery going to be? What is the rebuilding? We need to actually work with the communities over the long term so that they are more resilient in the future.
And what do people need most at the moment?
At the moment, the needs, as you can imagine, are a place to live. Just hearing the stories of how people are sleeping out on the streets in open areas, sometimes in religious buildings, monasteries, mosques, churches. But also we know that there are people that have yet to been reached by humanitarian aid. This continues to be a challenge, and we as the Red Cross are trying to work to reach those people, particularly in the areas that are a little more outside of the urban areas of Sagaing City and Mandalay, as well as Naypyidaw.
Okay, thank you so much for talking us through that. We wish you well with your work. Marie Manrique from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the earthquake in Myanmar also caused destruction in neighbouring Thailand. Rescuers in the capital Bangkok pulled another body from the rubble of an unfinished skyscraper that collapsed in the quake, bringing the death toll in Thailand to at least 19. Meanwhile, 75 construction workers are still missing. Authorities are investigating metal and steel parts taken from the wreckage. Let's join our correspondent, Tommy Walker, in the Thai capital, close to where that building came down. Welcome, Tommy. How are search and rescue operations going there?
Well, a short time ago, Bangkok's deputy governor said that search operations are round the clock at the moment. And even though we've passed that critical 72-hour window, 3 days since that earthquake hit Myanmar on Friday, it's not a recovery operation, it's a rescue operation. They're still treating it as a rescue operation. Now, just behind me, the number on the police board shows that there's 13 people, 8 men, 5 women, have been found deceased under this rubble. Still 74 missing people, thought to be missing people under the construction. As you can see me, it's a huge effort. There's cranes in the sky. There's aid teams on the ground. And this effort is continuing, soon to be dark. And we're just waiting to hear if there's going to be any survivors from this operation.
And as I understand it, the aftershocks are continuing and there have been recent evacuations. People there in Bangkok must be very worried at the moment.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it was the people who were saying that they'd felt aftershocks, certain buildings, government buildings, hotels and high-rises where there was some evacuations. The government has since said that there was some aftershocks in Myanmar, but they didn't impact Thailand. And these cracks, the cracks in the building were there from Friday. And that's why the buildings felt like they were maybe slightly swaying. So, you know, the city's on edge at the moment because of Friday. People are concerned about being in high rises. So that's kind of the update with that. But aftershocks were in Myanmar. The government's denied it and said it's because of existing cracks in the buildings.
Let's talk about this building that came down. Thai authorities are investigating the potential causes. What are you hearing?
So there was one industry minister visited the site yesterday and said that there was some irregularities with some of the steel work from this 30-story building that came crashing down on Friday. Now, in recent hours, local media have reported that an anti-corruption watchdog has sort of looked into this building and, you know, found out some details. There was concerns that there might have been some cutting corners with building this construction site. There was concerns that there was too few workers working on this. And this building site, which was supposed to be for the government, was behind deadline. There was many delays, and there was potential earlier this year for the project to be cancelled. So there's a lot of information recently come out about that. Prime Minister Pattongtarn has said she wants her administration to investigate what's happened here, and she wants an update within 1 week.
OK, thank you for that, Tommy. Tommy Walker in Bangkok.